There's there's two powerful stories that I really want to share on attitude, because I want to show, I want to show the audience, whoever's listening to this, I want to show you how um, our attitude controls our results, firstly, but also how, regardless of what the experience is on the outside, you can still control what's happening inside of you in terms of your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, right? Your attitude. So the first story I'm going to read, Emma, is from this book, My Father Knew the Secret, by Brian Proctor, by Bob Proctor's son. Have you got a copy of this book, Emma?
I have not. I will get one.
You have to get a copy. It
Yeah.
is, especially for those of you, if you're listening to this and you love Bob Proctor's work, you love his philosophy, these are personal stories from a son's point of view. His son, Brian, his eldest son, growing up with his father. If you're a Bob Proctor fan, you really want to get yourself a copy. I'll read it again, or I'll say it again. The book is My Father Knew the Secret, by Brian Proctor. And in the first chapter here, Brian says he's telling a story about, his dad at the end of his life. Bob passed in February 2022. And Brian says here, a few days earlier, when we were in the hospital, it was clear that the end was coming. He says Dad knew that he would be leaving us, and he was adamant about coming home. So obviously, Bob Proctor didn't want to die in the hospital. And no was not an answer he would accept. Dad focused on only making that happen. At that point, he was in the intensive care unit, and his visitor list was extremely limited. My father needed to see, touch, and say goodbye to his 11 grandchildren personally, along with some special friends. As you can imagine, he was not doing very well, but despite this, he continued to make anyone in his presence feel special. He was true to his being right until the very end. So we're talking attitude, right? Controlling it. The old man's on his deathbed here, and he's still treating everyone around him special. Brian goes on further to say, while we were waiting together, so they had now given permission that he could go home, right? And Brian says, while we were waiting together in his room for the transport team to arrive, we held hands and he was smiling. I could feel his energy. The ambulance attendant soon came in with a gurney to begin the process of transporting him home. When these two men walked into the room, Dad was so happy that he was going home that he lit up just at the sight of them. And as anxious as he was to get the process going, he did what you'd expect Bob Proctor to do. He made these two men feel seen. It was a powerful reminder of the great principle my father lived by. And you know the principle he lived by, right, Emma? Was to leave everyone with the impression of increase. Leave everyone that you meet better off. Brian then continues. He says, Dad looked at the first gentleman and he said, wait, first tell me, what's your name? And he answered, Muhammad. Dad looked him in the eye with a smile and said, Muhammad, that's a powerful name. And he then looked at the second man and asked him the same question. And the second guy replied, Torag. Dad said, I love that name. It's unique. Both men paused and they stood there for a moment looking at my father. So obviously this old 87, 88-year-old man, they obviously know his situation. He's going home to die. And obviously they had certain feelings about him walking into that room. But Brian says here, they stood there for a moment and they looked at my father, and then they had no idea who he was. But Dad had put such a smile on both of their faces, and he was wrapping them in kindness. That kindness he showed those two men caused them to be even more kinder to him, which was nice. They gently moved him to the stretcher and were about to wheel him out when he did something I will never forget. So as they about to wheel him out of the hospital room, Brian says his dad done something he'll never forget. Emma, he put his hands up into the air and he said to them, Mohammed, Torag, take me home, boys. And he said it with such enthusiasm, Brian says, that he surprised all of us. What an incredible frame of mind to have or to be in when making your final journey home. It was unbelievable and extraordinary at the same time. I mean, imagine that, Emma, having that sort of attitude and you know you're going home to die. I mean, you're excited about it. And Brian, in the book, he talks about how, while he was in ICU, they had been putting all these IVs, obviously, I mean, as happens in hospitals, right? Up him. And, Brian says, my dad wasn't really big on needles. And he says this one time, this nurse walks in and she's looking for a vein. She can't find a vein and she's literally pricking him all the time. And Brian says, my dad didn't like needles. Like, he wasn't big on it. And the lady, the more she couldn't find a vein, she was getting nervous and uptight. And Brian says, he just put his hand on her hand and he says, you're doing a great job and take your time, don't worry about it. And he really calmed her and he made her feel comfortable. But this is the sort of thing he was doing and how he was controlling his attitude, maintaining an attitude of success, even facing death. And when they wheeled him out of the hospital, when these two gentlemen wheeled him out, Brian says there were a line of doctors and nurses and, orderlies, people wanting to say goodbye to him and just touch him. He had that sort of impact or effect on those people. So, I mean, how often do we talk about attitude and we say, that one done this with this person, and then our attitude goes out of the window, or good attitude goes out of the window, a positive attitude, when here you can be faced with something impossible, literally death, and still be maintaining a positive attitude. And, Brian started out there by saying, my dad maintained, he says here, he was true to his being right up until the very end. What do you think about that story, Emma?
Well, one, it's, incredibly emotional. But the thing that really resonates with me is clearly he'd worked so hard on the feeling of fear. So generally, most of us, it's one of the, I can't remember, but, there's top 5 fears that everyone have in their life. And one of them is dying. It's a pretty big one, isn't it? I definitely, I don't think I fear so much me dying, but I fear the fact of what gap there would be left because I've got young children. Yes. So that's really what I would be very fearful of. Like I would do everything to make sure I'm there for them. But what we have there is this kind of, fear of dying, fear of needles, fear of all those things. And one of the things that he kept going right till the end, I mean, he made massive impact to the world in his 80s, when most people are like gibbering wrecks in a wheelchair, given up on life, that kind of thing. He literally was still impacting not just a few people, but, thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And the one thing that he talks about is his goal, isn't it? Of when you have a goal and you're going to hit like a point of where you're really fearful, and everyone has it, but you've got to work through it. But what happens is, when we've been talking about these kind of thoughts that come into your head, and he would always say that he would think, Bob, you don't need to worry about that. Like, what you don't need to do it, Bob. You've got plenty of money, you've got plenty of friends, you're really successful. You don't need to do that. But it doesn't matter who you are or where you are, you're still going to get those thoughts. They might not be Bob's thoughts, obviously, but you're going to get those thoughts. And he always made this thing that unless you're growing and going through that kind of fear barrier, that pain barrier, you're going to be dying, basically. So you're either growing or you're dying. And that's exactly what he did, didn't he? Right till the end. I mean, that's, you know, hugely kind of emotional for me to see somebody who has so much control of their thoughts and their feelings and their actions. And exactly as you said, he was clearly going to be in a lot of pain. He was clearly probably was perfectly, you know, within his own remit to feel a bit sorry for himself. Let's be fair, we've all done it, haven't we?
Because that's what most people would do, right? And understandably so. And understandably so. You know, I was thinking something earlier, and you kind of reminded me about it now. Thoughts are so powerful. Like, thoughts either take energy away from you or they energize you. If you're getting involved in negative thoughts, it's literally chopping at your energy levels. You know, people say, "Oh, I don't have energy," or I feel this way. It's because you're habitually getting involved in the wrong sort of thinking. If you're getting involved in constructive thinking, it energizes you. You know, how could someone like Bob go up until 87 and a half years old, a month before I think he passed, he done his last worldwide public webinar. So, I mean, he was going right till the very end or month or two before. And this was because his work and the sort of thinking, the attitude that he was getting involved in on a habitual basis, it was energizing him. Like, this might sound crazy, right, Emma? But I think we can actually get more youthful the older we get if we are channeling our thoughts in the right direction. Because, I mean, imagine being 70 or being 60 and having the energy of a 15-year-old. Someone listening to this right now is saying, "Ah, that's a load of bollocks." So what, you know, am I allowed to use that word here, Emma?
Not really, but it's fine. You've said it.
But it is possible. Like, it really is. I mean, it's really important that you get involved in the right thoughts, feelings, and actions. That you maintain a good attitude. Yeah.
I really want to touch on that because absolutely, you hear so many people, you know, doing a role or, you know, whether it's in property and they talk about, so for instance, people with tenants and they'll talk about them like, oh, they're just, you know, some of them would be like, oh, I've got these tenants and they're this and they're that. And I just kind of think, gosh, you know, if you're talking about basically your clients like that, that's not great, is it? And then there was a chap that I was listening to the other evening. It was just amazing what he was saying. He was saying things like, you know, and these are our tenants and this is what we offer them. You know, we offer them, you know, we offer to do their dry cleaning. We offer to do extra cleans for them in their rooms because these are busy people and it's not much. We want to add this. We do this and we do that. And these great people. And it wasn't like he didn't have some problem tenants as well. You know, he did describe an incident where he'd been owed a tremendous amount of money. But he just talked about it in a very, you know, this has happened and these are the ways we went around overcoming it. And it was so different and it was so refreshing to listen to it compared to others. I mean, I've got a recent one and all they keep saying is, oh, this, you know, what I do, it's just so exhausting. Every time we all meet, it's so exhausting. And my immediate thought is, then why are you doing it? If you aren't, exactly as you said, if you're not energized by it, and that's another thing I was really excited. There's quite a major person in property who talks about, you know, we have this kind of work-life balance. I'm not really one of those people because I love what I do. Well, it is my life. It's I don't really, I mean, some bits are a bit boring, you know, and I consider those to be more work, but inherently I just love what I'm doing. So I don't really see this work-life balance. And he talks about actually going on holiday with his family. And in the morning they go off and, I don't know, go to the beach, go to the pool or something. He does the work because that's what he loves. And then in the afternoon they come together. And that is what he considers to be work-life balance. Everyone gets the best of it. He doesn't sit there tapping his fingers, a bit bored, worried that he can't look at his phone because everyone will be like, you can't do that. And I love that. I love that kind of change, that transition in understanding actually what really energizes and vitalizes you. And yeah, I totally am with you on that.
But it gets started with your thoughts. So when that thought power flows into you, it's neutral. You have a choice. So you can say this is exhausting, or you can say, I like this. And if you can't yet say I like this, maybe ask yourself the question is, what do I like about this? Like, what do I? Because that will start your mind down the right track. You'll start looking for what you do like about it. I want to read you just quickly. I see we coming in for a landing here, Emma. I just want to read another story for you. So we're talking about perception, right? This attitude of success, moving your thinking, your feeling, your attitude down the right track. Listen to this story now. This story comes from this book.
Amazing.
Success through a positive mental attitude, and as Emma just said, amazing. It was written
book amongst anything else. I think this had the most dramatic effect
on attitude.
On me. It's unbelievable book.
And it was written by Napoleon Hill and W. Clement Stone. And W. Clement Stone was an insurance man. In fact, I think he was the wealthiest man in America in the 1970s. He owned an insurance business. And he tells a story about one of the salespeople in his team, right? He says here, I listened to one of our salesmen at Sioux City. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly for those of you that are American. I listened to one of our salesmen at Sioux City in Iowa gripe for over 2 hours one evening. Now, he kept telling me on how he had worked for 2 days at Sioux Center without making a sale. He said it's impossible to sell at Sioux Center because the people there are Holland Dutch, they clannish, and they won't buy from a stranger. Besides, he said, the territory has had crop failure for 5 years. W. Clement Stone then suggested, he says here, I suggested that we sell the next day at Sioux Center, the town where he had worked for 2 days without making a sale. So the next morning we drove to Sioux Center. For there I intended, he said, to prove to the salesman that with a positive mental attitude, for here I intended to prove that the salesman with a positive mental attitude who believed in and used our company's system would sell regardless of the obstacles. And while the salesman was driving, so the salesman's driving, and he says, I closed my eyes, I relaxed, I meditated and conditioned my mind. I kept my mind on the reasons why I should and would sell these people rather than why I wouldn't or couldn't. Once again, it's a choice, right? It's a choice, Emma. What path are you taking your thinking down? And here's what I thought, he says. He says that they're Holland Dutch and clannish, therefore they won't buy. He said, that's good. So what's good about it? So he immediately said, they're clannish, they're Holland Dutch. The salesman is saying they won't buy. He's saying that's good. And now he immediately asks himself the question, what's good about it? It's well known that if you sell just one of a clan, particularly the leader, you can then sell the entire clan. That's a good, if they clannish, right, Emma? Now, I will do whatever I have to do to make that first sale to the right person. He's saying mentally to himself, in the car, talking to himself mentally. I'll do that even if it takes a long time. Again, he claims that the territory has had crop failure for 5 years. He says, what could be more wonderful? The Holland Dutch are marvelous people and they save their money. Also, they are responsible and they want to protect their families and property. And as a matter of fact, they probably have not purchased accident insurance from any other insurance salesman because other salesmen wouldn't even try, for they, like the salesman with whom I'm driving, would have a negative mental attitude. Our policies offer excellent protection at a low cost. In fact, I'll find no competition. I then engaged, he says here, so this is where he obviously got involved in the feeling state, right, Emma? I then engaged in what I term mind conditioning. I repeated to myself with reverence and sincerity, expectation and emotion, please God, help me to make a sale. Please God, help me sell. Help me to sell. Please God, help me sell. Over and over, I repeated, and then I took a nap. He says, and when we arrived at SIO Center, we called at the bank. Now, the personnel consisted of a vice president, a cashier, and a teller. He says, within 20 minutes, the vice president had purchased the most protection our company was willing to sell, a full unit, and the cashier also purchased a full unit. He says, but the teller, I'll never forget the teller because he didn't buy. In fact, he was the only person that didn't buy in the whole of SIO Center. He says, and starting with the first place of business next to the bank, we began cold canvassing systematically, store after store, office after office. We interviewed every individual in each establishment. An amazing thing happened. Every person we called on that day purchased a full unit, and there was no exception. So obviously, he wouldn't forget the teller because that's the only person that didn't buy. He says, while we were riding back to the city, I thanked the divine power for the assistance received. Now, why did I succeed in selling in the same place where this other man had failed? Actually, I experienced success for the exact same reason that he experienced failure, except that he was obviously choosing something different from a thought, feeling perspective. He said it was impossible to sell because they were Holland, Dutch, and clannish. That's a negative mental attitude. Now, I knew they would buy because they were Holland, Dutch, and clannish. That's a positive mental attitude. Again, he said it was impossible to sell to them because they had had crop failure for 5 years. That's a negative mental attitude. I knew they would buy because they had crop failure for 5 years. That's a positive mental attitude. And I mean, it's all about perception. Do we see it as a problem, or do we see it as something that could help us actually in the process? It's all about perception, how you view it, and sadly, most people are getting involved in thoughts that are taking them down a track they don't want to go. And, if you've stuck with us till the end, and, these ideas and the stories we've been talking, and, Emma and I's chat has been, you're intrigued by these ideas and you're finding them helpful, I want to really challenge you, like in ending this chat, choose the right thoughts. Start thinking, feeling, and acting in a way that's in harmony with the person that you want to become. Don't let the outside conditions, circumstances, people control you. You control you. And you can control that even in the face of death. You can control that even in the face of being in an environment where it seems impossible. How, Emma, maybe lastly, how do two salespeople, right? They sell the same product. They work in the same marketplace. They serve the same demographic, right? Working for the same sales manager. One is struggling and the other one's killing it. What's the difference, right? It's attitude. It's the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions that we habitually get involved in.
Wow, that was really, exceptionally powerful. And I mean, I don't want to add too much onto that because that was so good, but you see it time and time again in, especially within the property world is, oh, well, I can't do that, or this is not happening to me. And you have to question yourself, well, what is it that you're thinking? And I say it to my kids, oh, I can't do this. And I just say, oh, well, if that's what you think, then that's correct. Absolutely. If you think you can't do it, then you can't do it. And I know that seems quite flippant in comparison to what you've spoken about, but absolutely. This, I think, for me, has been one of the pivotal things to understand and really change the results that are possible. And I think it's absolutely huge, from not selling anything in a whole place to then basically selling to everyone. I mean, what could be more powerful than that? Really incredible. Lee, so I know we're over time now. So yeah, tell people, how can they come and find you? You usually have a webinar coming up. I think you mentioned that was on the 14th. We'll pop that into the chat. But yes, just to tell people where they can come and find you if they want to follow some more of your incredible teachings.
So I'm active on LinkedIn and Facebook. So you can just connect with me on LinkedIn or add me on Facebook. And then we're having a webinar on the 14th of November. It's a Thursday at 10 a.m. UK. And the webinar is called How to Clear the Blocks to Your Abundance. So, Emma and I have been chatting back and forth around subconscious programming, ideas in there, and how, this affects us. And if you want to learn more about how to really get a handle on those ideas and replace those ideas and, get your thinking moving down the right track, right? Thoughts, feelings, actions. If you want to get it all aligned and you want to learn how to clear the blocks to your abundance, we'll drop the link. I mean, this is streaming on a number of different platforms. We'll drop the link in the comments or in the chat section with a link to register for that webinar. Once again, it's called How to Clear the Blocks to Your Abundance. It's an hour webinar, and I'd like to invite you to join us for free if these ideas resonate with you, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Amazing, amazing. Well, look, again, Lee, thank you so much for taking this time with us today. As always, I feel completely invigorated, and I've got this long list of kind of things that, you're really on, and then you work on something else. And this has brought a few things back up to the forefront where I think I'm going to go back and work on those again to bring myself back up, because it's absolutely so imperative. As I say to everyone that I mentor, you have to work on your mindset every day. It's so, so important, not just for success, but actually for being happy in life. And I think that is the biggest thing that we all want, don't we? We want to enjoy what we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis and not waste it, because we do have the most incredible lives. Oh, amazingly. Well, thank you so much. Would you like me to leave you? Do you want to do just a closing comment before we shut this down?
I think let's end with William James's quote. He said, human beings can change their lives by changing their attitudes of mind.
Amazing.
Thanks for the chat, Emma. I've had an amazing hour here with you. I also, just like you, I enjoy these. So yeah, thanks for hosting it. And hopefully someone in your audience is impacted by these ideas.
I'm sure they will be. Okay, guys, thank you so much. See you next time. Take care.